I was blessed by the heavens with an endless lifespan, yet not a single means of self-protection. The only thing I had was one stat point every year. I quickly understood what the system meant. As long as I survived long enough, I would eventually walk the path to invincibility. In this war-torn age, survival came first, so I put every single point into strength. Surprisingly, just that first increase was enough to let me slaughter enemies with my bare hands shortly after arriving in this world. When the second year came, I once again invested in strength, and my body transformed into something like an indestructible Vajra, immune to blades and spears. Relying on that ability, I secured a job as a town constable. Unfortunately, peaceful days never lasted long. During my first year on the job, the Great Song Empire went to war with the barbarian tribes and began conscripting soldiers nationwide. I thought there was no way I could avoid being sent to the front lines, but then I overheard someone say, "Guchangan is all alone, no wife, no children. People like him are the first to run away or defect to the enemy." To my surprise, that ridiculous assumption actually saved me from conscription. My captain, however, wasn't so lucky. Before leaving for war, he entrusted his 10-year-old daughter Shu Zhen to my care. Time quietly passed until the 4th year. With 4 points invested in strength, every move I made had already surpassed the limits of ordinary humans. When bandits attacked our town, I killed more than 20 of them with a single strike and successfully protected every citizen. Because of that achievement, I was promoted to captain. The town mayor valued me greatly afterward and said, "Little Gu, when I retire, the position of mayor will be yours." But good news was followed by bad news. Among the bandits I killed was a woman named Yang Li. Her older brother, Yang Gang, had attached himself to an immortal cultivator and become that immortal's disciple. There was a high chance he would return for revenge someday. Fortunately, he had only recently entered the mountain to cultivate and supposedly wouldn't return for 10 or 20 years. I simply nodded and didn't care. By the time 20 or 30 years had passed, who knew who would be stronger? In the 11th year, I had already invested 10 points into strength. At that point, a casual punch could tear through the air itself. Deciding it was time to experiment, I put 1 point into fortune instead. The result shocked me. Afterward, I found money while walking, never failed to catch fish, and could even reel them in without bait. 2 years later, news arrived from the battlefield that Zhu Zhen's father had died in battle. The news devastated her, and she cried for a very long time. Around the same time, several immortals arrived in town. They announced, "We are immortals from the Fuyao Immortal sect. We have come to recruit disciples. According to our findings, there is someone here blessed with immense fortune. Such a person's future is limitless. The last individual with such fortune became the founding empress of our sect." For a moment, I wondered if they had discovered my talent. But after testing everyone, it turned out that the person with an immense fortune was actually Shu Zhen. She did not refuse the opportunity to become an immortal disciple. After spending more than a decade together, she had long noticed that I never aged. She had already concluded that I was no ordinary mortal. In hopes that we could remain together in the future, she not only agreed to become the sect's holy maiden, but also requested that I accompany her. The Fuyao sect initially had no objections, but when they tested my aptitude, they discovered I was an extremely rare person with no fortune whatsoever. People like me supposedly damaged the fortune of those around us, and the sect strictly forbade accepting such individuals. Just like that, I was rejected. Thankfully, the Immortals were kind enough to allow me to choose between a cultivation technique, pills, or a treasure artifact. After thinking for a moment, I asked, "Do you have any cultivation techniques that sacrifice lifespan for faster cultivation?" One of them replied, "We do, but are you sure you want to cultivate it? Mortal lifespans are already short." I nodded firmly and said, "I'm sure. Please grant it to me." The technique was called Returning to Ruin Art. It consumed a lifespan to accelerate cultivation and could reach the Golden Core realm at incredible speed. More importantly, every year I lived would passively strengthen my body. When I opened the manual, I discovered that it claimed 300 years were needed to reach Golden Core. 3,000 years to become a mighty cultivator, 30,000 years to reach a near saint realm, and 300,000 years to become invincible beneath the heavens. I almost laughed. No technique in the world suited me better. Even better, the technique could burn triple the lifespan for triple the cultivation speed. For ordinary people, the Golden Core required 300 years. For me, it would only take 100. 10 years later, after the old mayor retired, I became the new mayor of Weishi Town. Decades passed, yet my appearance never changed. The townspeople all assumed I had received some immortal blessing and began treating me as half an immortal. Many people came hoping to become my disciples, but the Returning to Ruin art was not something ordinary people could cultivate, so I had no choice but to refuse them one after another. By then, my cultivation had reached the 7th layer of the refining Qi realm. I possessed 20 strength points and 6 fortune points. I could casually throw a leaf and pierce a mountain 50 meters away. Thanks to fortune, I even achieved an enlightenment breakthrough, evolving the returning to ruin art into the greater returning to ruin arts in art, capable of reaching the nascent soul realm. As my reputation spread, more and more people sought me out. Some had families that were destroyed and wanted revenge. Some had their engagements broken and carried resentment. Others were martial geniuses whose cultivation had been crippled and wanted justice. Every one of them seemed like the protagonist of some legendary tale, but I still refused them all. Thinking they lacked sincerity, many simply settled in Weishi Town and tried to win me over through persistence. I could only shake my head. Ironically, their arrival boosted the town's economy, so I stopped complaining. One day, because I rarely displayed my strength, someone began doubting my abilities. They secretly arranged for 2 gangs to create trouble in town, hoping to force me to intervene. Looking at both groups, I calmly said, "Compensate the shop owners for the damages, and I'll let this go." One man replied, "Fine, we can pay, but everyone says you're an immortal. If you really have the guts, why not compete with us?" I looked at him and said, "This is not a place for killing. It's where ordinary people live." He sneered and said, "If you have nothing else to say, get lost." Moments later, another man suddenly stepped forward and revealed himself. "My apologies. I'm actually an officer from the Great Song Constable Division. I arranged all of this to invite you out of retirement and ask you to defend the Empire against foreign invasion." I frowned and asked, "Am I really the only immortal cultivator left in the Great Song?" He sighed and replied, "There is another immortal, but he has been in seclusion for years and no longer appears. We can only rely on you now." I remembered seeing an immortal annihilate an entire city with one strike when I first arrived in this world. That memory was the reason I chose to stay low profile. Yet now there seemed to be no immortals available. Curious? I asked why. The officer explained, "Immortal, surely you know about the upper and lower realms. Mortals live in the lower realm. Most immortals reside in the upper realm. If they descend here, they suffer severe suppression and may even have to start cultivation from scratch. That's why very few are willing to come down." I understood immediately. This world wasn't actually full of powerful figures. Given enough time, I could genuinely become invincible. As for saving the Empire, war carried too many uncertainties. I decided it was safer to stay hidden. A few days later, a dried corpse appeared in Weishi Town. Similar incidents had happened decades ago. Someone said, "I remember Taoist Mu Xie handled this kind of thing before. Does anyone know where he is?" Another replied, "He's already on his way." Since I lacked supernatural investigative abilities, I could only wait. 2 hours passed without any sign of him. Then someone rushed in and reported, "Taoist Mu arrived, but only his corpse did." The villagers who found his body had also discovered a piece of parchment. After reading it, I learned that he had spent 20 years investigating a monstrous flood dragon serpent hidden deep within the mountains. The creature regularly emerged to drain human essence and nourish evil spirits, creating those dried corpses. Unfortunately, the Taoist had died while investigating it. After finishing the report, I instinctively blurted out, "Do you know the story of the foolish old man who moved mountains?" Someone asked, "Who is that?" I smiled and replied, "Me." That very night, I headed into the mountains. Following the Taoist's records, I found a mountain shaped like a giant snake. Activating all 25 of my strength points, I smashed the ground apart. The entire mountain exploded instantly. From the rubble emerged a giant serpent dozens of meters long, already on the verge of death. Realizing what had happened, it roared in fury. "Just a little longer, and I would have transformed into a flood dragon. You ruined everything. Aren't you afraid of heavenly punishment?" I calmly answered, "I'm not even from this world. Why would I fear heavenly punishment?" After killing the serpent, I unexpectedly obtained a trace of true dragon energy, which improved my own fortune as well. The next day, when the townspeople saw that an entire mountain had vanished overnight, they immediately guessed it was my doing. They gave me the title of the half-invincible immortal. More and more martial artists came to Weishi Town, eventually turning it into a place known as Little Jianghu. I knew nothing about this because after killing the serpent, I returned to cultivation. During my years in seclusion, Little Jianghu grew into a genuine martial arts hub. 4 major sects established roots there. Meanwhile, the old emperor of the Great Song died, a young emperor ascended the throne, political struggles erupted, and the border defenses collapsed. Barbarian armies broke through the first line of defense and advanced steadily. Then, one year, a major figure arrived at Little Jianghu. It was Yang Gong, who had entered the Immortal sect 30 years earlier. News spread instantly. The 4 sects were baffled. Yang Gong cultivated for 30 years. Why come here immediately after leaving seclusion? No one knew the answer. They decided to welcome him respectfully and persuade him to leave peacefully. 3 days later, Yang Gang arrived at the town harbor. Without a word, he cut the entire dock road apart with a single sword strike and shouted, "Bring out the freak living in this town." One of the sect leaders hurried forward and said respectfully, "Immortal Senior, welcome. We have prepared a banquet for you." Yang Gang coldly replied, "This place used to be Weishi Town." The leader nervously answered, "It was, but now it is known as Little Jianghu." Yang Gang's expression darkened. 35 years ago, I entered an immortal sect. That same year, my younger brother pursued martial arts. I thought both of us would have bright futures. But before I descended the mountain, my fellow disciple used a tracking technique and discovered my brother died in Weishi Town exactly 35 years ago. His sword trembled in his hand, emitting a terrifying hum as killing intent flooded the air. "You changed Weishi Town into Little Jianghu, but I don't care. Find the murderer. Anyone connected to him will die." The crowd erupted in panic. The 4 sect leaders knew they were no match for him. One of them carefully said, "Senior, this happened 35 years ago. We only settled here 10 years ago. We have no way to find the killer." Yang Gang replied coldly, "The tracking technique shows the murderer never left Weishi Town in all 35 years. Bring me everyone who never left." The sect leaders immediately ordered an investigation. Yang Gang then warned, 3 hours. I'll wait only 3 hours. If there's no answer, I'll kill one of you first. Cold sweat soaked their backs as they mobilized everyone in town. While waiting, Yang Gang asked about the current martial world. They explained who the strongest experts were. One leader proudly mentioned a martial artist who could leap hundreds of meters across the sea. Yang Gang scoffed. "A frog in a well dares compare such tricks to immortals?" Then someone cautiously mentioned that besides the top martial artists, there were 2 individuals recognized as immortals. Yang Gang asked, "Who dares call themselves an immortal?" They immediately answered, "The first is your master, the first immortal of the great song." Yang Gang nodded. "That's appropriate. Who is the second?" Nervously they explained, "The second is a new figure from the past 35 years. Rumor says he can move mountains and fill seas. A single drop of water can kill someone. He is also the mayor of Weishi Town." Yang Gang asked, "Have you actually seen these feats?" They admitted, "No, these are old stories from 10 years ago, but so many people say them that they're probably true." Suddenly, the sect leaders remembered something. If we're talking about someone who has never left Weishi Town in 35 years, he qualifies. Yang Gang immediately demanded to meet me. The sect leaders hesitated. "He's in seclusion. We fear upsetting him." Yang Gang laughed. "He's an immortal? So am I. And unlike him, I'm a real immortal. Take me to him." Unable to refuse, they sent elders and disciples to my residence. Yet when they arrived, nobody dared enter. For 10 years, not a single person had stepped into my courtyard. Finally, one man gathered courage and called out, "Immortal, are you there? This humble one seeks an audience." From inside, I asked, "Who is it?" The man immediately bowed. "I mean no offense. There is an urgent matter." Behind him, hundreds of martial artists dropped to their knees. Nearly 300 people knelt outside my house. I finally opened the door and asked, "What's going on?" One elder hurriedly explained, "An immortal from an immortal sect has arrived by river. He insists on seeing you. If you refuse, he says he'll kill our sect leaders." I sighed. "That's impatient, huh? Why are all of you kneeling?" They begged, "Please leave seclusion and save our leaders." I chuckled. "How many years have passed?" Someone replied, 10 years, immortal. This is still Weishi Town." I nodded. "You people should stop building sects and start building infrastructure instead." They looked confused. Then I asked, "What's the name of this immortal?" They answered, "Yang Gang." The name sounded familiar. "What does he want?" "He's here to avenge his younger brother. His brother was killed in Weishi Town 35 years ago." The moment those words entered my ears, my memories became crystal clear. Right, his brother was named Yang Li, wasn't he? Everyone nodded. I calmly said, "I killed him." Instantly, all 300 people froze. Since a guest had traveled such a long distance specifically to see me, it would be rude not to greet him properly. So I followed them to the harbor. When the sect leaders saw us approaching, they assumed I had refused to come and that everyone was preparing to die fighting. Their eyes even became emotional. Yang Gang looked at the massive crowd and sneered. "What's this? Planning to fight me?" I stepped forward and asked calmly, "You're Yang Gang?" The coldness in his eyes intensified. "You dare impersonate an immortal? Fine, let me see if you have the qualifications." I ignored him and focused inward. Every stat point accumulated during my 10 years of seclusion was poured into strength. In an instant, with 35 strength points empowering me, unimaginable power surged through my body. Looking at Yang Gang, I said, "You should have come 35 years ago, on the night I killed your brother. The longer you waited, the less you should have come." It was the truth. Because I only grew stronger with time, and my growth speed was terrifying. Once Yang Gang realized I really was the man who killed his brother, he didn't become furious. Instead, a cruel grin spread across his face. "Good. Killing that useless fool saved me the trouble. Now when I kill all of you, it'll be completely justified." The moment he finished speaking, he unleashed a sword strike wrapped in overwhelming sword energy and shot toward me. The surrounding martial artists fled in terror, yet faced with an attack that made everyone pale, I merely waved my hand. The sword energy vanished instantly. Every spectator was left speechless with shock. Looking at him, I said, "You don't even understand the basics of power, yet you dare swing a sword?" Yang Gang's face twisted in disbelief, but his killing intent only grew stronger. He was a once-in-300 years genius of his sect, destined to stand beneath only the supreme beings. In his mind, every mortal should kneel before him. How could he allow someone like me to suppress him? Unfortunately for him, before that thought fully formed, I flicked my finger. The flood dragon energy inside me erupted instantly. In the next moment, Yang Gang was torn apart into a cloud of blood. He didn't even have time to react. Not a single bone remained. The entire harbor fell silent. One finger to break rivers, one finger to move mountains, one finger to kill an immortal. 3 impossible feats accomplished with a single finger. That was what true immortal power looked like. Looking around, I simply said, "If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving." The sect leaders immediately bowed and replied, "Please do. If you ever need anything, just command us." One of them cautiously asked, "Would you like us to repair your house?" I shook my head. "No, I like Weishi Town. Staying in that old broken house reminds me of 35 years ago. If time is like flowing water that can never be held, then I'm simply a stone resting at the bottom of the river. I don't move with the current. When enough time passes and I look back, the people and events of the past are already gone. At the very least, I should keep a few old things to remember them by." Before long, news that an immortal had killed another immortal in Weishi Town spread throughout the Great Song Empire faster than the cold winds of winter. In just half a month, everyone was talking about it. What shocked people even more was that the immortal I killed was himself a true immortal, perfectly proving that even among immortals, the gap could be enormous. 3 days later, a massive procession arrived and completely sealed off the area. The enormous procession that arrived 3 days later was filled with experts seeking immortality, and many of them carried the unmistakable insignia of the royal family. Even though nobody said it outright, everyone in Jianghu knew who had come: the Great Song Empire's eldest princess. Inside my shabby little house, a woman dressed in luxurious royal robes stood before me and pleaded, "On behalf of the Great Song Empire, I ask you to come out of seclusion and save our nation from disaster. I am willing to grant you the title of Imperial Preceptor and fulfill any request you have." I looked at her and replied honestly, "Let me make one thing clear. I may be a good person, but your empire doesn't really have anything that interests me." She refused to give up and said, "But you've lived within Great Song's lands for so many years. Surely you feel some attachment to this country. Besides, the barbarians are ruthless. If they invade, countless innocent people will be slaughtered. If you act, you won't just be saving Great Song, you'll be saving the common people as well." I nodded slightly and answered, "You're right, but emotional appeals don't work on me. Moral pressure won't change my mind. Sorry." Lowering her head, she said, "My apologies for disturbing you." "Good," I replied. Just as she turned to leave, a notification suddenly appeared before my eyes. Ding! Fortune effect activated. Contact with the royal family detected. Fusion progress increased by 1%. I immediately froze. That works too? I jumped out of my rocking chair and called out, "Wait!" The princess stopped and turned around. "Return first. I'll arrive in 3 days." Her eyes widened with joy. "Thank you, sir. It's wonderful that you're willing to help. Great Song can never repay this kindness. I'll immediately inform my younger brother and have you officially appointed as Imperial Preceptor." After she left, another notification appeared. Ding! Fortune effect activated. Royal family favor obtained. Fusion progress increased by 5%. I muttered to myself, once fusion reaches 100%, it should evolve. Another notification followed. Identity updated. Great Song Imperial Preceptor. Obtained 20% national fortune blessing. Cultivation speed and breakthrough probability increased by 20%. I blinked in surprise. When I was a constable and later a mayor, there had never been any notification like this. It seemed those positions were simply too insignificant to provide meaningful bonuses. The higher the status, the stronger the benefits. After sending the princess away, I cleaned up my house, spent some time fishing near the town entrance, and only then leisurely returned home. 3 days later, I packed my belongings and stepped forward once. Instantly, I appeared over 1,000 meters away. Moving at incredible speed, I headed straight for the border. At that very moment, inside the frontier city, a soldier rushed into the command hall and reported, "General, the barbarians are attacking again." The general immediately ordered, 100,000 cavalry are charging toward us. Have the soldiers prepare their bows and defend the walls. Under no circumstances are they to leave the city. Tell the martial artists stationed inside to remain alert and prevent enemy infiltration. Yes, sir. After the soldier left, someone asked, "Has the Imperial Preceptor arrived yet?" Another answered, "No message from the rear forces. The Immortal probably hasn't arrived." The woman present could only sigh helplessly. "I hope he makes it in time. The barbarians have produced an invincible warrior. Last time, he broke through 3,000 armored soldiers by himself and nearly turned the entire battle around. Someone frowned and asked, "He's strong, but don't we have martial arts masters too? They should be able to stop him on the battlefield, right?" The woman shook her head. Zuo Feiyang said that even if he and the old monk joined forces, they would still be slightly weaker than that barbarian warrior. If they fight to the death, they'll probably be the ones who die. He's really that powerful? Before anyone could continue, thunderous hoofbeats echoed from outside the city. The earth itself seemed to tremble as tens of thousands of cavalry charged forward at full speed. The defenders hurriedly drew their bows, but before they could fire, a single figure burst out from the front ranks of the barbarian army. Every leap carried him dozens of meters through the air. "Tiemumu!" someone screamed. "That's the barbarian warrior Tiemumu!" The soldiers immediately released a rain of arrows, but Tiemumu casually waved his hand and shattered every single one before continuing his charge. The distance of 1,000 meters vanished in moments. He was almost on top of the city wall. Panic spread among the defenders. They could fight ordinary enemies, but how were they supposed to stop a monster like him? Moments later, Tiemumu slaughtered every soldier standing atop the walls by himself. At the same time, giant siege hammers crashed against the city gates. The gates finally gave way with a deafening explosion. The city's last line of defense was gone. The barbarian cavalry appeared before everyone like an unstoppable tide of destruction. Just as the Great Song soldiers believed death was inevitable, I suddenly appeared between the two armies. Stretching lazily, I waved my hand and said, "Go back." The barbarian commander narrowed his eyes and asked, "You're one of Great Song's experts?" I shook my head. "Not really, but you can call me the Imperial Preceptor." The moment those words left my mouth, the defenders exploded with excitement. Great Song only had one Imperial Preceptor, the newly appointed Immortal. The leading general immediately dropped to one knee and shouted, "Greetings, Imperial Preceptor!" Unlike the Great Song soldiers, the barbarian commander urged his horse forward and sneered, 3,000 of my grassland cavalry can conquer anything. 30,000 can sweep across nations. Behind me stand 300,000 riders capable of crushing all of Great Song. You're just a martial artist. What gives you the right to stop 300,000 cavalry?" With a roar, he gave the order to attack. The cavalry surged forward, shaking the earth itself. The defending soldiers looked terrified. Even with an immortal present, the enemy still had 300,000 cavalry. Could I really stop them? Faced with their doubts, I remained completely calm and even took the time to stretch. Only when the cavalry reached 30 meters away did I finally smile. Then I slammed my palm into the ground. The power of the flood dragon erupted completely. In an instant, the earth cracked apart and collapsed. Nearly 10,000 barbarian riders were swallowed alive by the shattered terrain. Both armies stood frozen in shock. Was this truly the power of an immortal? I stepped out from the smoke and rubble of the ruined battlefield and looked toward the cavalry still standing hundreds of meters away. Smiling casually, I said, 300,000 cavalry aren't enough. Maybe 3 million would make me take this seriously. Not a single barbarian dared reply. Looking at me standing atop the ruins, they felt as though they were staring at a god. Only a divine being could possess such terrifying power. Fear spread through their ranks instantly. They turned around and fled in utter panic, leaving behind a chaotic and humiliating retreat. Seeing this, the defending soldiers became wildly excited. Their eyes were filled with admiration as chants of "Imperial Preceptor" echoed across the battlefield. Even the eldest princess watched with uncontrollable excitement and reverence. Was this the power of an immortal? Perhaps this was the absolute limit of strength that a person could reach. Suddenly my expression changed. Looking several hundred meters to the left, I saw Tiemumu still battling Zuo Feiyang and the old monk. I casually kicked a piece of rubble. The stone shot through the air like lightning and instantly pierced Tiemumu's leg. Gritting his teeth in pain, he glared at me viciously and shouted, "What kind of skill is attacking from behind?" Dusting off my sleeves, I calmly asked, "You think you're good at fighting? Are you better than me?" Tiemumu roared in fury, but he could only continue glaring. Meanwhile, Zuo Feiyang and the old monk quickly retreated and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Imperial Preceptor." I casually acknowledged them. Neither felt offended. Although they were famous among the 10 great masters of Great Song, they knew the gap between themselves and me was as vast as heaven and earth. The fact that I had injured Tiemumu with a casual kick was proof enough. Yet Tiemumu still refused to accept reality. Slamming his fist into the ground, he created a massive crater and shouted, "You only gained your strength because you were born at the right time and received opportunities during the era when spiritual energy flourished. In terms of talent, I surpass all of you. Give me 30 more years. When the next great era arrives, I'll stand at the peak and kill you." Hearing that, I couldn't help muttering, Damn it, that's such a familiar protagonist line. Suddenly, movement came from the ruins of the city wall. Before Tiamumu could even react, a giant hand seized him and hurled him through the air. He crashed into the ground and vomited blood. I slowly walked toward him and picked up a sword that one of the soldiers had dropped. Time to go! Just as I was about to finish him off, a loud shout suddenly echoed from the distance. The great divine lord has descended! Before I could react, golden light erupted from Tiamumu's eyes. The dying warrior rose into the air. Possession by a god? Similar techniques existed in Taoist traditions and even among ordinary people. They allowed divine spirits to descend into mortal bodies. But what I was witnessing now was clearly far beyond ordinary spirit possession. Standing on the only intact patch of ground within 100 meters, I stared at the floating Tiamumu and frowned. Who are you? He didn't answer. Instead, he spoke disdainfully. A mortal body is truly weak. I can only use this much power. At that moment, a refining chi cultivator flew over from the distance and respectfully bowed behind Tiamumu. Sect Master greets the immortal of the upper sect. The possessed Tiamumu finally glanced at him and asked, "Were you the one who summoned me?" The cultivator nodded repeatedly. "Yes, immortal. I invited you here to eliminate this person and prepare the way for the future arrival of the upper sect." To his surprise, the immortal didn't even spare him a second glance. Instead, he raised a hand, gathering divine light within his palm, and said coldly, "This world already belongs under the jurisdiction of the demon immortal sect. Besides, it's so barren that there isn't even a single golden core cultivator here. Why would I need to descend personally? Do you idiots realize I had finally managed to start a conversation with the holy maiden? Because of your stupidity, I was forced to descend into this miserable world." The moment those words were spoken, the cultivator's face turned pale. Trembling violently, he dropped to his knees and begged, "This humble one didn't know. I disturbed the immortal's cultivation. I deserve death." "You really do deserve to die." The cold voice echoed from Tiamumu's mouth, but I could tell it was no longer Tiamumu speaking. The next second, he clenched his outstretched hand. The refining chi cultivator's body twisted and compressed violently, flesh and bones collapsing inward until he was reduced to a pile of bloody paste. He died on the spot, without even having the chance to scream. After that, the possessed Tiamumu slowly turned his gaze toward me. Golden light flickered inside his eyes, overflowing with murderous intent. "You deserve to die as well. If not for the disturbance caused by an ant like you, I would never have been forced to descend into this world. I'll harvest all of your souls and turn them into the foundation of my cultivation. Only then can I recover the losses I suffered by coming here." The moment those words were spoken, everyone present turned pale. He wasn't talking about killing one person. He wanted to harvest the souls of the entire martial world. Die. A cruel smile appeared on his face as he clenched his hand again, clearly intending to crush me the same way he had crushed the cultivator. Yet I remained standing exactly where I was, completely calm. Then I casually threw a punch toward empty space on my right. My fist struck nothing. Yet a strange metallic collision rang through the air. Immediately afterward, the space in front of me began to crack apart. It shattered piece by piece like broken glass, fragments falling away into nothingness. The soldiers and barbarian cavalry watching from afar were completely stunned. None of them had ever witnessed such a terrifying ability. Slowly withdrawing my fist, I looked at the figure floating in the sky and said, "If you're going to entertain children with tricks, at least bring something more impressive. This is boring." Hearing that, his expression instantly darkened. "You are merely a slightly larger ant. Stronger than the others, perhaps, but still an ant. Your fate is no different. You will be crushed beneath my feet." I smiled. "Have you considered another possibility?" The flood dragon energy within my eyes began burning brighter and brighter, spreading throughout my body. "Maybe everything under heaven is an ant, including you." My lips curled into a fearless grin. Clenching my fist, I lightly pounded my chest and declared, "And I'm the biggest ant among them all." The moment I finished speaking, a gigantic fist formed from flood dragon energy descended from the sky. For the first time, shock appeared on his face. His hands rapidly formed seals, and layers of golden barriers materialized around him. "Ancient defensive divine art," someone shouted. It was supposed to block fatal damage. But when my giant fist slammed down, those golden barriers shattered instantly like fragile paper. The self-proclaimed immortal was smashed directly into the earth. The ground collapsed thousands of meters deep under the impact. Just like that, the so-called upper realm immortal completely disappeared from existence. Looking at my smoking fist, I nodded in satisfaction. At that moment, a notification appeared before me. I had obtained 3 strands of invincible will, along with a cultivation manual called the Profound Soul Tao Scripture. According to the description, every time I killed an enemy above my own realm, I would gain a strand of invincible will. It could strengthen me beyond others of the same realm. Collect 3,000 strands and I could forge an invincible body, open the path to the great Tao, and ascend through the heavens and countless worlds. I understood the general idea, but honestly, I wasn't that excited. 3,000 strands were needed, and I only had 3. I was still incredibly far away. As for the cultivation manual, I could study it later. Looking toward the hundreds of thousands of barbarian cavalry still standing in terror, I waved my hand and said, "Get lost." Not one of them dared argue. They immediately turned their horses around and fled toward the grasslands as fast as possible. Then I suddenly called out, "The cultivators stay." The refining chi cultivators froze in place. You people helped those upper realm immortals. You were their eyes and ears in this world. Instantly, they dropped to their knees and begged for mercy. One of them cried, "Please spare us. We'll never contact the upper realm again. Besides, descending requires a body as powerful as Tiamumu's. Talents like him are incredibly rare. There won't be another one anytime soon. Immortal, you don't need to worry." Crossing my arms, I sighed. I'm actually a pretty nice person. In fact, I'm so lazy that I avoid fighting whenever possible. That's why I'll use the fastest method to kill all of you. It'll hurt less. The slaughter lasted only moments. 56 overseas cultivators died outside the border city. Standing there among the corpses, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. After the destruction of the barbarian army, Great Song not only defended its borders but also reclaimed hundreds of miles of lost territory without sacrificing a single soldier. The barbarians retreated back to the grasslands and never dared invade again. All of this happened because Great Song possessed an immortal, its imperial preceptor. Before long, people throughout Jianghu began calling me the half-invincible immortal. Some even claimed I was more powerful than the emperor himself. As I circulated my energy, I could clearly feel the admiration and faith of Great Song's citizens. The flood dragon energy inside me became even stronger. One day, while sleeping inside a luxurious carriage on my way to the capital, I suddenly sensed a strange fluctuation of power and instantly woke up. At that moment, a young woman's clear voice came from outside. Honestly, I never had any expectations about the capital. I only wanted to ride in a fancy carriage once. Her smile stiffened awkwardly after saying that. Curious, I asked, "What's your name?" "Song Chen," she replied. Seeing me, she nervously gripped her clothes and cautiously asked, "Imperial Preceptor, what do you think of the Great Song Empire?" I thought for a moment before answering, "Nothing particularly special. It's no different from any other dynasty. One emperor, a few hundred officials, and hundreds of millions of common people. As long as there's no famine or war, life isn't so bad. But times are always changing. One day, your empire may become nothing more than a page in a history book. Nobody can predict the future." She blinked and said, "But you're still Great Song's imperial preceptor." I chuckled. I could just as easily become the imperial preceptor of another dynasty. Besides, I'll never appear in any history book. The journey continued. Everywhere we passed, local officials rushed to greet us. After receiving permission from the guards, they would kneel along the roadside with their subordinates and respectfully shout praises to the immortal. I never paid much attention to them. Compared to my current status, I actually missed the days when I was just a constable in Wakeshie Town. Back then, life felt freer. Since becoming an immortal, I had seen less and less of the human world. Maybe that was why cultivators often secluded themselves. The fewer people and events they experienced, the less attached they became. When they finally emerged from seclusion, they stood high above the world, judging everything only through strength. There was nothing inherently wrong with that, but I always felt something important was missing. Eventually, my carriage arrived in the capital. The roads had been cleared by the imperial guards. Citizens knelt on both sides of the street, repeatedly chanting my title. Inside the imperial court, every official had already assembled. Even the emperor sat on his throne in silence. No one dared speak because they were all waiting for one person. "The imperial preceptor has arrived," the announcement echoed throughout the palace. Yet moments later, confusion spread through the entire court. "Where is the imperial preceptor?" someone asked. The guards awkwardly pointed toward the carriage. Apparently, I was still inside and had no intention of getting out. An official immediately scolded the guards. "Did you offend the imperial preceptor?" The guards nearly cried. "We informed him that His Majesty wished to meet him, but he refused to come out." Hearing this, Emperor Songwei stood up in panic. "What nonsense! It's not that he wishes to meet me, it's that I wish to meet him." The entire court fell silent. After a moment, the emperor bowed toward the carriage and respectfully said, "This humble ruler requests an audience with the imperial preceptor." Several moments passed with no response. Sweat appeared on Songwei's forehead. Lowering his body even further, he said, "If the imperial preceptor is dissatisfied with anything, please tell me. I will correct it immediately." Finally, a voice came from inside the carriage. The door slowly opened, and I stepped out with a lazy expression, looking around before asking, "You're the emperor?" Songwei immediately cupped his fists and replied, "I am Songwei, emperor of Great Song, and your most loyal supporter." I nodded approvingly. "Not bad. You understand the rules. This is exactly how people should treat the imperial preceptor." Songwei quickly added, "To Great Song, the imperial preceptor is like a second parent." I grinned and replied, "In that case, I'm basically your father." The entire court froze. The old ministers nearly fainted from shock. The younger officials prayed the emperor wouldn't lose his temper and provoke an immortal. The atmosphere became incredibly tense. Then something happened that nobody expected. Songwei suddenly raised his head, his eyes shining brightly. Cupping his fists again, he shouted, "Father!" In that instant, both the old ministers and the new ministers fell completely silent. Before absolute power, imperial authority looked almost laughable. After court ended, I left the palace and decided to wander around the capital. But the moment I stepped outside the city gates, I noticed something unusual. Someone was secretly watching me from the shadows.